Material Differences, Chapter 11, Part 1, Lessons in Death and Dinner. So, I'm a little confused. What part of doing some light recon work involves getting chased by an army of scavs and burning a city block to the ground with void fire? Ham asked, as he crossed his arms and looked down at Jaeger. Jaeger and Max had returned to the compound once he had been satisfied that the scavs in the area around the garage were taken care of. They were currently in the armory as they cleaned their gear from the mission. You remember what the general used to say, right? A violently executed plan now is better than— Wait, no. He paused and looked up as he tried to remember it more clearly. A bad plan violently executed now is better than a great plan that's nowhere in sight. Something like that. Jaeger shrugged it off as he carefully scrubbed his rifle down. There was something about the smell of gun oil that just helped soothe and relax him. And how did it even get to that point? Ham asked next. We found Crusaders at the first fort, he led off with. Are you kidding me? Draugr and Crusaders? Were we the last people on this damn planet to find out something big is going down? Ham exclaimed as he tossed his hands in the air in annoyance. Possibly. Well, anyway, from the map we found, it looked like they were checking the areas around the war museum. I wanted to take a look, so we sneaked closer. Snuck closer? Sneaked? Snuck. Whatever. Then while I'm scoping out the museum, I see several artillery pieces being set up in the park. I was planning on just watching for a while, but the scavs surprised us both and followed us up, so while Max fought off the patrol, I took the shot. He set down his brush so he could reach over and pat Max's shoulder. Max just nodded, but had been fairly quiet since emptying his stomach in the street. Well, this is all just great! Now Mark knows where we are! Ham gasped out before Jaeger coughed and made a cutting motion across his throat a moment to try and get the pilot to shut up. Mark? Max asked with a confused look over at Jaeger. Jaeger had a few seconds to consider how to try and cover up the name, but then just sighed and shook his head. We think Uncle Mark is behind the Draugr, he confessed. What? Uncle Mark is alive? Max asked with surprise as he stopped cleaning his own gun now to focus on Jaeger. Maybe, Jaeger waved a hand. The Draugr are part of Project Ragnarok, a subset of Project Valhalla. It was supposed to provide the means to train and equip large quantities of conscripts in the event of a war going terribly wrong. Obviously, it wasn't fully operational when the war went terribly wrong. What we don't know is why Mark or whoever is behind this is attacking people. The Draugr we've heard about are raiders. Killing, stealing, that sort of thing. So they're bad guys. But if you think Uncle Mark is behind this— Max trailed off, obviously looking confused. He's family. He then said simply as if that should mean more than it did. Shouldn't we just try to talk to him? No. We don't want him to know who he's dealing with specifically, Jaeger stressed. If he knows it's me, he'll likely bring everything he has and try to kill us immediately. Or, at the very least, me. I'm not sure how he feels about you, Jaeger corrected himself. What? Why would he want to kill you so bad? Max asked. Because he thinks I'm responsible for corrupting his sister and getting her killed. Jaeger explained as he sighed and went back to cleaning his rifle. Mom? Corrupted? But she sacrificed herself to save everyone and end the war. Max scoffed as if the idea was absurd, which it was to Jaeger as well. Mark was a loyalist. He didn't care about the people she saved. He just wanted his sister back. Jaeger responded with a sad shrug. It was also absurd to think that Jaeger had anything to do with corrupting Leona. She'd been the one to open his eyes to the wrongs they were doing as Revenant. He'd been perfectly happy obeying orders and killing on command. Wait, I thought you guys were the loyalists, Max mentioned, obviously confused still. We considered ourselves loyal to the core ideals of the actual Void government. To the reasons why we joined, more accurately, why people like Ham here joined. I just joined to get off Earth, Jaeger admitted. But Mark and those loyal to Odinson and Absolute Dynamics considered themselves loyal to the program and what they felt it was supposed to achieve. It's not like either side was going to brand themselves as traitors, so they called themselves loyalists and we called ourselves the Ardent. Your mother gave a very impassioned speech to kick off the mutiny. We got the name from that, Ham added as Jaeger nodded. The loyalists wanted the Hive dead, but they didn't care about anyone else. While we focused on the central hub and ending the war, they were mostly concerned with the Crusaders pushing into what was left of Void territory. They called the pact a violation of Void sovereignty, and were constantly trying to undermine it and take control again. They refused to acknowledge the civilian government or any parts of the military who chose the people over them, Yeager continued. Well, it was slightly more complicated than that, Ham said and then shrugged. But that's the gist of it, yeah. When were you planning on telling me this is all related to Revenant? Or that you think Uncle Mark is alive? Max asked, then looking concerned. When it felt right. Yeager shrugged, and then saw the way Max was looking at him. I didn't think it was important earlier. I was taking you on your first seriously dangerous mission. I didn't need you getting all worked up for what it could mean when we don't actually know anything solid yet. I was planning on telling you once I brought everyone back here, so you just get to know a day or two early. Max continued to stare at him. Don't give me that look. I knew the scavs were just scavs, and if I considered the Draugr to be more of a threat, I'd have responded accordingly. Speaking of the Draugr, Ham cut in. Were they augmented? I only got a good look at one of them up close, Yeager mentioned. He was a tough bastard. Walked out of a void fire with half his armor fused into his flesh. Ugh, Max groaned as he mentioned it. Can we please not talk about the burning people? I had to let the body finish smoldering to really inspect it, Yeager continued, ignoring Max's comment. No cybernetics. That's a relief. Ham sighed, then looked concerned once more. What about genetic altering? Lazarus gland? Yeager shrugged at that. It was fairly charred, though it didn't seem like it. But there's half a dozen projects that Mark might have gotten his hands on since the end of the war. All kinds of battle drugs, or combat enhancers that could be boosting their performance. What I really want to know is why do they just have axes and shields? Even if he can't manufacture Revenant-quality weapons anymore, he should have more than enough surplus from the arsenal stashes to equip them. I'm guessing it's some sort of elite status thing, Ham suggested. They're so badass they only fight with axes and shields. That sort of thing. Yeager nodded slowly as he considered that. It did seem like something Mark would do. Make them feel like they were more elite, and to help differentiate them from common scavs. Anything of note regarding the other scavs? Ham asked next. Not really. They were certainly more organized than I've ever seen scavs, but that doesn't make them actually competent. They did spot the deadbolt we popped to get into a building overlooking the parkway. Then they got up to us without making a bunch of noise. That was surprising, Yeager admitted. You didn't leave Spike behind to fuse it shut? Ham frowned. I didn't think I'd need to. It was a small door off to the side. I figured they'd skip it. Bad luck. Yeager shrugged it off. Once the fight actually began, they reverted to pretty standard scav tactics. Swarm of bikes, firing wildly all over the place, just chase people down without thinking. They didn't properly herd us, and they just charged straight into Bertha. She stacked them up in a pileup and doused the area in void fire. Caught 40 in the central blast. The smart mortars angled the discharge in so none of the buildings got hit. Just burned the middle of the street. He rattled off the debrief to Ham very casually as he recounted the events. Ah, that's why he came back looking positively green? Ham said as he realized why Max looked uneasy. Just mentioning it made Max shift in his seat. It's not a very pretty sight, is it? I think he was doing all right until I told Bertha to conserve ammo and just mercy stomp the survivors around the edge, Yeager explained. He was still proud of how well Max had done. Getting sick wasn't anything to worry about. Oh, well, there you go. Just about everyone pukes while witnessing their first cherry poppers, Ham replied with a wry chuckle. Okay, can we talk about this? Yeager and Ham both looked over in surprise at Max's outburst. He looked upset. What? Yeager asked first, unsure what was wrong. How can you two talk so? Max waved his hand holding a brush around while the other kept the gun in his lap. Casually? His voice dropped to almost a whisper as he looked distraught. I killed people today. Yeah. Yeager nodded in agreement, confused what the issue was. Max just kept looking at him as if expecting more. Yeah? Came Yeager's unsure addition. Well, you've always told me that killing someone is a serious affair not to be taken lightly, he pointed out, but Yeager just nodded. Sure. Had he heard him claiming hitting the scav with the truck was 20 points? He needed to be more careful, but the way Max kept looking at him made him feel like he was missing something else. Is something wrong? He finally asked. Max started as he looked up to Ham, who just shrugged, also unsure what was going on. You're both so calm, so nonchalant about it. I watched Bertha stomp on a man's skull and you called it cherry popping like it's a joke, he pointed out. Ah. Yeager nodded then as he began to understand what was making Max uncomfortable. We're jaded. I still take what we did seriously. It's no joke. But we're too used to it to let it weigh down on us. You have a gun in your lap. He pointed, and Max looked down at his carbine. A gun is an instrument of death. I've told you to be careful and treat guns with respect. But you've been around them so long, it's changed. Sure, you still respect them, but it's an easy, comfortable respect. You clean it, maintain it, and stay disciplined when using it. But you're not afraid of it. It's not a mysterious, deadly boogeyman to you. The same sort of thing happens for us in death. I didn't take our actions lightly. What we did was serious. But I'm not going to get worked up over it. You had Bertha light 60 men on fire. You mentioned being merciful, but you wouldn't let her just shoot them. Max protested then. Where's the honor? Despite himself, Yeager couldn't help but laugh. Thankfully, Ham also laughed. Are you serious? Max gasped out as they did that. Sorry. Yeager held up a hand as he got his laughing under control. It's a bit of a Pavlovian reaction, from a drinking game we all used to have. As he said that, Max gasped and looked concerned. Not about killing or anything. Yeager waved his hand. Saying honor in regards to combat? When we used to watch vids together? Anytime someone mentioned honor in that context, we'd all laugh and drink. But you're the one who taught me about the importance of honor in our lives. Max frowned as he said that, as if trying to make sense of what he was hearing. I did, and I stand by that. Yeager nodded. However, I don't believe there can be any honor in combat itself, but it's in why we go to battle, who we do battle with. Those are the choices that actually hold honor, Yeager explained. Remember what I've told you about being in a fight with someone out to kill you? You do everything you can. You use every tool in your arsenal, every tactic you know, every shred of willpower, and you kill them before they kill you. Or worse, the people around you. And you did that. You fought back immediately and without hesitation. He reached out then and squeezed Max's shoulder. But to truly embrace that idea, you have to know how to fight without honor. When you were shooting the 50 at the bikers chasing after us, was there honor in that? They had guns. It was an open and fair fight, Max replied, but Yeager just scoffed. Open and fair? Who is it who decides what's fair? You're a synth, even if they hit you. Did they hit you, by the way? Max shook his head. Right, well, even if they had hit you, it's not like pistol rounds would have done much to you. Between your armor and being a synth, you'd have shrugged them off. Meanwhile, you had a 50 cal machine gun to fight back with. Is that fair? And I've always told you a fair fight just means you haven't properly stacked the odds in your favor. They had a choice. They came after us, Max insisted. That makes it honorable? I had just blown the head off their boss. You shot up their patrol, he pointed out. Weren't they just defending themselves from assassins? Yeager countered. It's not like that. They're scavs, Max started. Ah, Yeager cut in. This is what I'm talking about. If you try to play this game, it gets really complicated. You accept that scavs are bad people, right? They're murderers, rapists, and cannibals, and killing them is a good thing as far as the rest of society is concerned. Yes? He waited for Max to nod. Then any method of killing them should be acceptable. You can't play the honor game in combat. Accept that they're hostile and therefore need to be killed, by any means necessary, and likely with extreme prejudice. Ah, Odinson's favorite euphemism for killing someone as violently as possible. Ham chuckled softly. Max, I think I understand what you're getting at here. You're likely trying to reconcile the fact that this messed up individual here. He gave Yeager's shoulder a pat. Is your dad? Who loves you and cares for you and does all kinds of nice things and cries like a little baby at children's movies. I'm telling you, if you don't cry at that scene, you don't have a soul. You cried too. Yeager wagged a finger back at Ham, who smirked but continued. But he also shows no remorse for killing. He kills calmly, almost casually at times, and is so comfortable in the heat of battle you might think he's a bot. Right? Ham asked. Yeah, I guess that's it. Max agreed with a slow nod. It just doesn't fit. I've shown you some of my past memories to try and prepare you for this. You didn't get the feeling from any of that? Yeager asked, genuinely curious. I guess it felt muted? Max thought it over, squinting as he considered the question. I think I just felt like I was missing something, and when I finally fought, I'd understand. Now, I think I'm more confused, he confessed. That's totally natural, Ham replied. Your dad and the other grunts were heavily conditioned for this sort of thing, you know. They were? I was. Max and Yeager both spoke at the same time and glanced at each other as Ham chuckled. Yes. You like watching war vids, right? You ever watch any of the ones where they deal more with the PTSD after? Not as exciting, but you might have seen some. He asked, and Max nodded slowly. One or two. Just to get an idea of it, I guess. But they seemed sort of fake. I never saw Dad showing any of the symptoms of the people in those vids. Max shrugged slowly. They seemed weak? Hey, there is nothing weak about suffering PTSD. Yeager fervently responded to the comment. There is no shame in it either. It's a serious affliction that has and still hits a lot of veterans. Those vids are important to show that anyone can get help and there's no weakness in it. I am no stronger even if I don't suffer it. It can hit anyone. Almost, Ham cut in. Your dad and all the revenants were very, very, very expensive to produce, not to mention time-consuming. Can you imagine how annoyed those project managers would all be if they spent all this time and money getting them trained and equipped only to lose them to PTSD after an operation or two? A lot of their training was just conditioning to more or less become immune to it. They essentially inoculated them to trauma, trained them to feel satisfaction in battle. The organics, at least. The synths, they could mostly program it out by messing with the hormone synthesizers. Does that mean, what about me? Max asked, then looking uneasy with the thought. Yeager, meanwhile, was thinking on what Ham had just said. He couldn't for sure say he was right, but thinking back it made sense. The fact that you're even questioning all this means you don't have it. I'm not sure if they'd have to activate it, or if it needs a trigger. You might not even have it at all. Ham shrugged.